Yeah, true. Hello, and welcome to the podcast Biz on the Brain with your host, Annemarie, where we talk about how to be your most unapologetic and authentic self in life and business. Because what is more rewarding than attracting the right kind of clients to you because you are just your true self and you feel validated in your experience, your creativity, your worth, and your uniqueness by just being you. All of that you already have. And I absolutely love the persona that is often told towards us that we have to develop to be deemed professional, being stiff and so clean and generic and absolutely unattainable in our pedestal of expertise and authority. I hate it. So that's why I founded this podcast to really talk about all of the different ways you can run your business according to your own intuition, according to your own soul and passion, and in the unique way that you see the world, experience the world, and can share your gifts with other people just based around who you are and where you've been and who you want to become and who you want to work with. And in this podcast episode, I'm talking to the strategy for creatives, Ximena Santibanez Zamora, who has gone through such a colorful career path. She's been a producer, she's organized events, and now she's really helping creatives step into the business side of things while also returning their spark, their joy, and their fierce passion towards their craft and really, merging the logical side with the creative side to create sustainability and still be playful in their business, which I totally subscribe to. And I loved how much of a turn this conversation in its podcast episode took because I did not expect us to talk about music so much. And I absolutely love it because music to me is one of the best ways to connect to my feelings or explore new ways or connect to old memories, places I've been, people I've met, foods I ate. It is really such an evocative means to get a reaction out of me or to transport me mentally. And I just love talking about it. And I don't want to even spoil much of it. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Ximena. Hello. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, Ximena. Did I say that right?
That was perfect. Yeah, that was really good.
Very good. Okay. Introduce yourself. Like, what amazing things do you do? Because we had such an amazing chat only yesterday, and I was like, you got to be on a podcast ASAP. And so here you are, magic. So introduce yourself and tell the world what you do.
Well, I've had a long journey, actually. I've done a lot of things. But basically, what I do is I focus on strategy, creative strategies. I support either content creators, organizations, artists to figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it. That's the most important part of my job, making sure that they know why. Because there's a lot of ways to do things. There's a lot of different paths you can take. And that's really what I've learned through life. I've been a music producer. I've been a music manager. I've done social consulting, research, investigation, all sorts of different things. But the one thing that I noticed is that people need to know why they're doing what they do. And you can be the same person and you can be super productive being a doctor or being a caretaker or being a leader or just being a mom or being someone who supports someone else throughout a process. You can be the same person and be super effective and productive and happy doing different things as long as you know your why, as long as you have super clear who you are and that you're bringing something to the world. If you get that, anything you do, however you do it, it will work out.
That's true, but it's also one of the hardest parts, especially if you're multi-passionate, multi-talented, which I categorize myself as because I do a gazillion different things. I love doing a thing. And if I don't, I get bored, I get very understimulated, but I get also easily to the other extreme where I just do all the things and I have all of the impulses and then I either get paralyzed or burned out. And then I keep like losing my why, and then sometimes it feels so muddled, so confusing. And one of the biggest things I'm always trying to reach for, but it kind of seems to evade me, is clarity. And I think that is tied to your why. So how can you help people with why? Because that is a small innocent question, but it's so big and looming when it is tied to your purpose, your monetary value, your like eternal value, like your
Right.
success, like all of these big words. But what is the actual essence of why?
Right. And even going deeper, we're very privileged people. We have
Oh yeah.
communications, we have all the things.
Mhm.
But it actually goes sometimes to how you provide for yourself and stay alive. Right.
Mhm.
So we're obviously going into deeper, meaningful things, but sometimes it's as simple as I need to put food in the table. I need
Yeah.
to support a family. I need to do all the things. And even then, your why is super, super crucial, right? And it has a lot to do with your intuition, yes, because it's all about how to really listen to yourself. You are filled with wisdom, internal and historical wisdom and genetical wisdom and ancestral wisdom and all of these different things. And all of those things are within you. They live inside of you. They are sometimes those two little voices that they put with the angel and the devil.
Mhm.
That's also part of who you are. It's probably your ego and your aspirations both having the conversation at the same time and usually not agreeing on anything.
Mhm.
But it's really about learning to sit with yourself, to learn who you are, to learn to value all the great things that you bring to the table, all the mistakes you've made. I think that has been my hardest journey, to be able to look at my mistakes and not judge me and not hold them against me, because I usually do that. I'm like, oh, if you could have done that, then we wouldn't be in this trouble, and then things would have been easier if you had
Mhm.
listened to that person, if you had listened to that person, right? If you had paid attention when you noticed the red flags, if you had done, and we feel ourselves with so many regrets. Um,
Yeah.
that yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard to go there, but you really need to be able to look at your path and say, okay, I did this because I was thinking this, right?
Mhm.
And you go back to your why. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
It's not, we usually go with, because I was dumb, I was silly, I was
Yeah,
naive.
we usually get very negative about it or dismissive or even humbling ourselves when there
Right,
should
putting
not
ourselves
be that.
down. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we do a lot of that. But
Mhm.
what we usually should be going to is, okay, I did it because I thought this would lead to this.
Yeah.
Because I thought this person was crucial for that, because I thought this person would bring this, because I thought what I knew at the time would be useful for this, right? If you change the discourse there,
Mhm.
it's so much more empowering. It's so much more honest, really,
Yeah.
because you don't do things just because, right? You actually have a reason.
Right.
It's not usually a reaction. And even when it's a reaction, even if it was a spur of a moment kind of thing, you did it because you wanted to be more practical. You did it because
Mhm.
you wanted to be fun, right? There's something inside you that really led to make that choice of going left or going right. It's really about that. And we usually don't understand how much our inner wisdom or sometimes our programming is really leading the way, right? So when you
Right.
go back and look at it, then you can actually assess, wait, so I've made more choices led by just programming and going with the motions, or wait a minute, I've been actually listening to myself more often. And
Mhm.
I can totally bet you that if you do the exercise of actually looking back at what you've done, there are more times when you've actually done what you wanted and not what you thought you should have done. And those times when you did what you actually wanted, it went great. You
Yeah.
felt better.
Especially
People
when
were
you went
happier.
against everybody and you just knew it. But I think that is so rare, even if you're very intuitive or empathetic. I think it also very daunting because you cannot explain it, you cannot justify it, but you just know in your bones. And then just taking that step is so scary. Like you walk, like I always think of that one scene in Indiana Jones where he just took
Right.
the leap onto the canyon and suddenly he didn't fall. Like it's that
Right.
to me.
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
visual. Take the leap of
Definitely. And that's the thing though. We think we need to justify why we did it, and we really don't. The biggest justification of what we do and what we choose is the outcome. If we're happy, if we're productive, if we're fulfilled, if we're making a living and enjoying ourselves and healthy, then you don't have to justify anything to anyone, right? Because the outcome just shows that what you did was the best thing you could do. It gave you what you wanted, which is peace and enjoying the moment and enjoying living and being of purpose and being of service and bringing value. All of those things will be the outcome and they will be undeniable, right? If someone had asked, for example, Oprah Winfrey, why she decided to start talking about spirituality and, oh, that probably wasn't the best move. You could have just stayed being friends with all the artists and talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have made a lot of money. And she can say, have you seen what I built?
Right.
Right? So it's not about, she shouldn't have to justify why she chose those things. Even though there's a lot of reasoning, it's important for her, mental health developed into a thing, it was her personal process, all these different things that could justify why she did it. But it's really not about that. She doesn't need to go there because she has a whole empire to say, well, I think I did the right thing.
Right. And even so, there will still be naysayers of people who doubt it or people who don't like it. And looking at that, they always exist. No matter what you do, you cannot please
Yes.
everybody. And especially if you do your own thing, like very unapologetically, very aligned, you will even be more repellent to those people.
Right.
They will be more loud and you will be triggered. It's almost like a test from the universe or whatever you believe in to tell you if you're really fortified in your in your conviction and in yourself.
Yeah.
And that is also scary. So it's just always fighting the people pleasing, fighting the trying to fit in, fighting to like keep it safe and humble because our lizard brains, they don't like change, they don't like challenging environments. They want to keep the peace, which can actually just mean playing it small and actually being a failure. Or actually being unsafe, because if you don't get the money because you're afraid to put yourself out there, then you can't really survive in this capitalist society. Like, that's actually dangerous, but your brain doesn't know.
Exactly. And I think there's a great song. I love Tim McGraw, and he's a country singer from the
Yeah, he's good.
And there's this song that's How Bad Do You Want It?
Oh, yeah.
And I love that song because it's really, that's where I go with the why. How bad do you want this? How bad are you really eating, dreaming, sleeping with that one thing in your mind? That's what he says. And it's like, yeah, it's something that's not even in your mind. It's all over your body. When you really want to follow something or start a relationship or connect with someone, you feel it everywhere. It really is a bodily experience that you have to learn to, again, experience.
Yeah, that's
you need
the
to
thing.
know what it is.
Get to it. That is my thing. Because usually I'm in this very mellow state, especially past few years.
Yeah.
But I've had these moments where people were just like throwing stuff at me, trying to like make me do some other thing. And I was just like, nah, I do my thing. I don't know why I do it. And then afterwards, people were like, oh, it's great that you did it. I'm so proud. Like, I would have never thought, whatever. And I felt good. But there's so many times when I am just not feeling the drive. So I can't throw myself into it because I'm just like not sure where I should, like, if I am obsessed with something, if I'm really into it, I will be bulldozing my way to do it. But I haven't really connected with that, which is like one reason why I started this podcast, to get back to this intuition, to like this, I don't know, spike of passion. And it's been so mellow in the past 3 years. And usually my spike of passion came with me traveling, just getting exposed to different ideas, and that sparked ideas. But like with not being able to travel, then kind of staying in this stuckness almost, it felt disconnected. And now I'm like in this catch-22. Like, I would like to travel, but now I'm having a basis. So how do I keep both? And I know it's possible because I've been there before. I've seen people. I have a lot of people in my life that do it. So what is it? So like, this is what
we lost a lot of momentum. We lost a lot of what we had learned was our way to go. I used to do the same. I used to travel all the time and connect with people. And I did feel stalled. I was like, all of what I wanted to do, and I knew how to do it. Like, I had finally found a way to do it. And now it's in reverse because I cannot do all of those things that I learned were my way to go. And that kind of thing really throws you off. But again, if you go back to you, to listening to yourself, there's also something that we need to be very honest about. There are some periods that are like gestational periods where you're creating something that you have no idea what it is, and they are awful and they're very heavy and they're very slow, and it really doesn't feel right. It's not comfortable to be there. But you need to trust yourself, the universe, the higher power, whatever you want to trust that's bigger than you. Um, that's your bigger than your mind speaking and making noise, right? Because there's a lot of you that should be listened to. Um, and you need to be honest about all the things that you're learning. Maybe you needed to heal something. Maybe you needed to connect with this one person who you're learning a lot about. Maybe you need to read that book, take that course, or just sit with yourself and figure out that something was misaligned and something you hadn't listened or something you had kind of left behind as not important. I know that myself, I had put my writing very much aside. I was doing all this coaching and strategies, and I was very happy being useful to others. And I really wanted to write. And I was not writing. And I'm like, I could write, oh no, but I have to do the session and I need to finish this for my client. And I need to do that. And then I would go back to, but I need to write.
I relate to that so much.
Right? Because again, you had to provide for yourself. Yes, there's a stability. There's a keep it going, keep it moving. You want to travel, right? So you need a budget for that. It's not easy. It's not cheap most of the time. So there's all of those things. But if you lose yourself in what you're doing just to have the stability and not what your gut is telling, what your mind is like, I would wake up in the middle of the night with this one scene about this one story that I was thinking about writing, and I would have to just get up and write it. It would just seriously not let me sleep. It was like, okay, you didn't do it throughout the day. You dismissed me like it wasn't a big deal. You really don't have time to write. Okay, let's make time. Like, right about now, 4:30 in the morning. Get up and write it because it's going to go somewhere, right?
4:30 is such an interesting time because I like not for me. Like I don't like I usually stay up until like 1 or 2. But I've read that so many creative people like in the past there was and I've read this. Was it an article? I don't know. Anyway, I don't know the source. Oh my god, might be totally made up what I saw. But what I've heard is that the people used to sleep like 2 sleeps in the night when I just like went to bed with the sunset, right? Or like a little bit of candlelight, and then I went to sleep. And then I woke up at like 4 a.m. and then had creative input. So like that's where artists would start to write and stuff. And then I would just sleep again. And apparently it was a common thing. And, you know, artists like, you know, Taylor Swift, she wrote a whole album about this thing. And, you know, it's so interesting how when the calm of the night settles, suddenly all of the distractions are gone and it's just you and your mind. But it's so nice because sometimes it can be unsettling to just be you and your mind, but it's just something about you being so tired that you just release yourself into this experience with your mind. That's how I see it. And I think it's very like the creative hour is what I see it as.
I think it's that. And I have read it somewhere too. I've seen that many people have that creative strike. And even healers get that nudge to wake up in the middle of the night and do healing sessions. I've heard a lot about people doing that. And it's usually around 4 a.m. in the morning. That's usually the sweet spot. Some others just really get up at 5 and that's how they start their day and that's how it flows. I'm not there. I'm not that kind of person. I also do stay up till very late and then get up at a non-regular hour. But there is something to that. And I noticed that if I actually make time for those things that are really becoming my passion throughout the day, I have less of that. If I actually enable my creative, if I enable the little kid that wanted to go out and play, if I actually give myself like 30 minutes in the garden to just go and play with the dogs, I don't have so much of that in the middle of the night. I do enjoy my midnight creative sessions. Those are not too bad either. But it's usually when you've not let your mind go there. when you haven't really allowed yourself to make the time for you and what you really feel passionate about. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. I sometimes get like this. Usually, I get really creative like after 10 p.m., but then I'm also very tired, so I can't really do the photo project that I'm interested in. And but then I get up in the morning, and then I don't have the inspiration to do it. Right? So like my clock is a bit like not matching the typical 9 to 5. It never did. And I'm just fine with it, you know. But it is so weird because sometimes in the day I get this impulse of like, oh my God, what if we did a photo shoot like right now? Like right now. Don't wait until, whatever,
Yep.
an hour. It's too late. And then I'm sitting there like, no, I need to write my pitches. Now I need to do my texts. I don't know. And then I'm just sitting in this weird limbo, not doing anything. And I could have just done it. And then sometimes I even do the opposite where I'm like, okay, now I put myself in this time frame and I can do the photo shoot and then I will not feel it. I'm just like, yeah, I scheduled it. I can't schedule creativity. And then I will just keep going and drag it on and on and on until I get something out of it. And it's not even fun. So
Yes.
it's so frustrating sometimes when you're just like, can you please be I don't like. I've read this book, Big Magic. Do I have it here
Right.
to grab? I
I
do
know this one.
actually.
Yes.
And she
One
was
of my
talking
favorites.
about
Yeah.
it's like a game changer. It clicked in my head. It was
I
like
totally recommend it for creatives. It's really, really good. I've read it
amazing. It's
twice.
well
Yes.
researched and it's so difficult to grasp the concept. But Elizabeth Gilbert did a really good job, and she
Yes.
described it as like I don't know if you remember how she described it, but basically inspiration is sort of like an entity of sorts. If
Right.
it knocks at your door, you don't let it in.
Like a
It just goes
muse.
to
Yep.
someone else,
Mhm.
and then they create the thing that you have had in your mind. I remember when she described this book that she had in her mind, but she never took the time to write it. And the way she described it, I was like, I read that book. And then she wrote, and later on, she's like, that's what somebody else wrote after all. And then she couldn't tap into the energy again. And I've often had that where I was like, I have this random idea, but I don't feel good enough. And then I go about my day. And then somehow on YouTube, I see someone made that exact video. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
And I'm just like, damn it. Or like, actually, because of this podcast last year, a year ago, I wanted to start this podcast. Like out of the blue, I was like, I need to start a podcast, but I did it. I got all of the excuses, all of the insecurities. And then, and when I wanted to launch it, I was just like, okay, I was just going to start it for the new year. Somebody had taken the title of this podcast. How on earth? Why would they have done that? And they didn't even finish it. They had like 6 episodes and it was just about some student project. Like it was nothing big, but they took my title. It was gone. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I waited on it. Somebody took my idea and I was like crying. It was like, oh no, I'm going to like, I had a domain. I set up, like I filmed all of the intros again. I did all of the artwork again. And I just launched it the next day. I was like, I got to get this out now. Like this is my kick in the butt. If somebody else steals my title, I'm going to be mad.
That's why I think many of us who are not millennials should embrace the millennial attitude where you just do things when you feel them, not when you're ready for them. It makes so much more sense. And I actually think that's the best business practice nowadays. Get started doing it and then get everything ready around it. It just makes way more sense, especially because things change all the time.
Right.
So if you wait till you're ready for it,
that's never going to happen anyway.
It never happens. So yeah, and you'll never feel totally ready if we're very, very honest about that. And the other thing is sometimes when you create something, and I've had this happen a million times, myself, my clients, my friends have said it, oh my gosh, I did this and I'm done with it and the book is ready or the record is ready or the song is ready or the show is ready. And there's one just like that. Someone else did it. Some huge name just put that out. And I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. Even if you're selling exactly the same thing as this super hot shot, no one gets everybody. No one gets the whole market. And some people just don't connect with that one person. There's actors that are great actors, and I can't stand them. And it's not personal. I'm sure they're great people. I've never met them. It's not a thing. It's just there's a chemistry, there's a connection with certain people. And even like if you analyze your family and your friends, your mom or your dad or your aunt could have said something to you and it just doesn't get to you.
Oh, I
So
mean,
it's
classic,
just like
right?
blah. And a friend, this one friend or this one song comes up and you're like, I get it. That's exactly what I needed to hear. And it's the same phrase, word,
Right.
concept, whatever it is, but it didn't get to you
Oh,
at
yeah.
that moment or from that person. So it's
Mhm.
perfectly okay if you create something that looks just like love,
Yeah.
because you never know who's waiting for it. That's one of the
Exactly.
things. There was a soap opera here in Mexico, and it was very cheesy, but there was this one
As always.
phrase. Yes, as
They're
you said.
lovely, amazingly cheesy. I love it.
Um, but I remember it was this girl who fell in love with an orchestra director and composer, right? And she was like the aide or something, or the nanny, or as it usually goes. And this guy who was like a super genius created this masterpiece and got totally mad and burnt it, like just threw it into a chimney, and it was like gone. And she cried her eyes out, and she was like, "Why did you do that? This was beautiful. This was a great creation, and you just threw it away." And it was like, "Yeah, but it was not perfect." And she was like, "No, but you never know who needed to listen to that." And it was
Exactly.
like one of those things that really stuck with me, because sometimes what you write, what you say, what you put out, you don't know who's listening and who needed that.
And you
If it's
released
coming
it
out of you,
already.
yes, if it's coming out of you, it's because someone out there, maybe even yourself,
Yeah.
needed to hear that, read that, see that, learn about that. So that's the one thing. I think that's the biggest
Sure.
thing that you need to pay attention to.
And then
If you need to say it, it's because someone out there, somewhere in the planet, needs to listen to it, read it, hear it, see it. If
or
it's
even
coming out
this,
of you, it's needed.
like sometimes there's this serendipitous moment where you just say something and somebody needed to hear it exactly that way, and they will tell you like, "Oh my God, you're like the fifth person who said the exact same thing," and you're just some kind of channeling
Right,
messenger, like all of that.
right.
Or you're on the other receiving end. You're like, "This is too many too many signs. Like I can't
Right.
ignore this anymore." Like I've had that with with so many things. I don't even want to talk about it 'cause it makes me a bit but at first, like, I want to go, I don't know where to start. My brain is already like, oh my God, so many things going. Oh my God,
Everywhere. Right.
ADHD brain. I didn't take my medication today. Can you tell? Anyway.
But it's good because, again,
Yeah.
if you, Annemarie, want to say something at that time, it's because it's something that needs to be said and needs to
Yep.
be put out.
I just need to
Yours, it
like
doesn't matter.
order the words. That's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to some
Yeah.
people it matters because I have like all of the footnotes and I talk in footnotes and I'm like, I'm getting to the story. It's all important. Anyway, it's all
Yeah.
segues, building the momentum. Anyway, so
Right.
like the first one was there's a real life example that I'm personally kind of peeved about. There's this artist I absolutely love, Dove Cameron, and she released a bunch of her own written songs over the past couple of years. And then she just took them down like last month because she has new material that she identifies more as, and everybody got so upset. And I personally, like, I listened to the songs, I related so hard to them. They were very depressing, but also very badass. And like, they just gave me so much emotion to work with,
Mhm.
and they were so important. And to her, I don't know what her decision making was in that, but it ticked off a lot of people on the internet. There were so many comments online of how they felt so connected to those songs, and now she ripped them out of their lives, and they can't listen to them anymore on Spotify. You
Mhm.
know, it just really shows that what you said, you release it into the world for a reason. Maybe it's not even you. Maybe you're
Right.
just the messenger. Like you
Mhm.
don't know, and you can't control how people react. You cannot control what it means to other people.
Mhm.
And maybe it falls into place at some point, but you can't just eradicate part of who you've been, what you've created. Even though I sometimes would like to do that too, because I've like
Yes.
the journey, you know, when you look back at your
Yeah,
old work, you're
it's
like,
messy.
cringe.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's you and you learn from it. Like when I look at my first videos, oh my God, they're so bad. But now I'm like, oh, I learned all of these things. Now I know why it's bad, but I still remember the joy I felt or like learning curves I had. And so I don't delete them. They're still like,
Mhm. Mhm.
some of them are private, but I will never delete them. Because it's just a reminder of who you've been, because all of that makes you as a person.
Yeah, and it does have a little bit. I've seen, for example, there are some artists here in Mexico who have changed the lyrics to their songs because of something that's just not representative anymore, or they don't feel comfortable saying or singing anymore. And that's okay. I get that. There's a reason behind it, and they share it and they make it public, and then the audience kind of joins in with that.
Yeah.
But from that to the taking it out and saying this was not part of the journey, you can't, even if you erase it there, it will come out somehow somewhere else, right? Because that's the way things work. We cannot delete our process. Our process is important. And
everything lives on the internet forever, basically, anyway.
That too. But even before it lived in the internet, I know some things in my life that even before social media and stuff, even if it wasn't known to everybody, I knew that. I had it in me. I still remember that. And even if it wasn't public knowledge and not everybody knew about it, I still had it in me. And the people that were touched by that event or that situation still had it in them. So it really, we're so used to social media and the digital platforms and how everything lives in the cloud, right? In the ethers, that we always think about that. But even if you take it out from there, you don't delete it from existence. It doesn't disappear completely. And I also think that gives us a responsibility of what we put out. And then again, we go to balance, right? Because then, is it worth it for me to write this? Is it worth it for me to create that? Is it just hurting people? Is it hurting myself, right? There's also, again, a balance as with everything else.
Yeah. But it also can be fearful. Like, it can be like just being mindful to not hurt people with your lyrics, even though you said it in jest or you just flippantly said it. It might hurt people. And there's all of this debate about woke culture and about the power of language. But at the core of it is like, do you actually want to offend people? And it's not up to you to tell them how to feel about what you put out there.
Exactly.
But it can also be like the flip of the coin where you are just using that fear
as an excuse. It's pretty safe to say, oh, I'm guarding everybody else from how I can harm them. No, you're guarding yourself from being hurt by the opinions of others or by not succeeding or whatever else. And I think that's the biggest thing about the why, the knowing your why. Like, I know there's amazing songs that if they didn't exist, even they have swear words, they say things that are not perfect and nice, but there's one moment in your life, in your energy, when if you sing and dance to that thing, you will heal.
Your music and dance, powerful.
Yeah. You're going to sit in the emotion. You're going to feel what you needed to feel, learn what you needed to learn from that emotion, and then be okay. And if you do the opposite and you think it's all peachy and roses and flowers and just classical music and harmony, that's not how life is. You're denying a whole set of emotions and things that can also teach you what not to put up with, what not to allow, what you don't believe in, what you need
language,
concept, right?
Yes. And to me, I love that we're talking music because I so rarely talk about music. I love music so much because to me, it really
my life.
I love that. It helps me regulate my emotions or like understand my emotions or explore them or like find other people to experience it through them, like even travel, like have different cultures, different songs, and like segueing back on my footnoting, that's how I discovered like one of my now artists that I'm super obsessed with, and it's because of sharing all of the vulnerability. So I might as well mention, like, I'm absolutely like obsessed with like the group DPR, especially DPR Ian, who has just made it his mission to like talk about mental health, and all of his videos and all of his music is just centered around that. And that was just such like it blew my mind, and actually it was aggressively pushed to me by Spotify. I ignored it for quite some time. I was like, I didn't want to listen to this. It ticked me off. Like, I just looked at the pictures and I just looked at the times. I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. And I kept seeing it everywhere. I was just like, okay, I can't. Okay, I do it. Okay, thank you, Spotify. And then I was like, oh my God, now I need to like know everything about everything. I need to consume all the things now. And now 2 years later, I'm still obsessed. It's perfection. And it's exactly that. It's like, it goes beyond all of the just vapid like narration and feelings and pop stuff. And it's just so deep on so many levels and so meaningful. And like the community they created as well. It's just, amazing. And that's the kind of art that I love. Like artists like Dodie, who writes about depression and depersonalization and just being lonely. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I like also Iliam, who writes about also depression. I was like, it sounds so depressive, but it's just such a relief and release to have people put words and kind of feelings through sonic experiences and visuals to it, so you can actually feel not alone, but also can show it to other people and
Mm-hmm.
actually just talk about it, because especially mental health is so isolating. It's so stigmatized, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot that's going on now that kind of shifts that narrative, but we're still learning so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
think just by sharing experiences and its essence, and in its essence, it's storytelling which connects people, and this is what it
Right.
is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think this just opens up the world and like changes people's perception and just makes them more tolerant, which is the ultimate goal. Like I just want to see people be themselves and be empowered and just like be weird or like whatever they feel like, and just feel validated in their existence. Like that, I don't know, that could be my why.
No,
I just
it's
want people to be
definitely.
happy.
I think it goes back to the connection
Yes.
piece, because that's really important. Yes, it's the storytelling, that's the means, right?
Mhm.
And it can be, again, stories don't necessarily have to do with words. They could be
Mhm.
sounds, they could be images, they could be
Right.
everything, right? There's a lot of ways to share your story,
Art.
even a photo, right?
Yes, photography,
Smell. There's so many things,
colors.
yeah, that can make really an impact in our senses, in our memories, in our wisdom, in all of that. And that's the main thing. Like, when you know that it will lead to you connecting with someone else and allowing for that thing to, because we're really, really all connected. And that's the funny thing. I found that those artists, those stories, those characters that you connect with, it's basically what people call the soul family. They are something, they connect somehow to something in your soul that says, ah, yes, that's it, right?
I also have a good name that I heard in a podcast. I forgot it, so I can't even credit it. I'm sorry. But they said it's an expander. It's also like a sort of like, they might not even be like, I don't know, soulmates or like whatever you attribute to that. It might just be something like, even when you get jealous of somebody, it's not just that you actually dislike what they have or whatever. It's just something that you could have if you did certain things that,
Mm-hmm.
just by knowing that you want this, it helps you realize that you can do it. Or,
Mm-hmm.
just to see the potential, it already exists. Because sometimes, people say, yeah, if it exists in your mind, you can create it, make it your reality. But that still feels so flimsy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Suddenly you're still without any concept of how you do this. And then you see other people who've done
Right.
steps in that direction. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is how they did it. So maybe I can kind of do it like that. But then you find your own path, or you connect with those
Mm-hmm.
people, or you find similar people, or you create a similar structure. Like it's just some way to
Right.
help you along the way instead of just completely blindly trying to get there.
Right. And it can be jealousy. It can be something that triggers your emotions. It can be
Yeah.
something that triggers something that you forgot about. And I use the word trigger very deliberately. I don't underestimate it. It can be something painful. It can be something that just detonates something huge in you that needed to happen. So it's not always just aspirational and inspiring. It can be painful. But the reason that it's painful, it's because it's something you need to look at that you haven't looked at in a while, or that is really getting in your way and stopping you from something great and amazing and beautiful. And yes, I think it has to do with the things that you look up to, the things you like, and the things you hate, the things you really can't stand in your life. Like, I know for a fact that a lot of what I do is because I couldn't stand people being shallow and hurtful in the business world.
Oh
I
yeah.
hated it.
Oh
The
yeah.
reason why I started managing artists was because I saw my favorite artist being trampled all over, and I learned about her story, and then I decided if it could be in my hands, I would never do it that way. And then I went and did it. And I started working with
I love
artists, and
that.
I learned why the managers have some part of the reason sometimes, and why artists should be cared for, and tender people need to be treated in a safe way. And that's something that I didn't see the world doing. And I wanted to do it. And I went in and I got super hurt in the process. But then I was like, oh, but this is why it works and this is why it doesn't work. This is what I did wrong. This is what I didn't know. This is where I was naive. And this is the one thing that I will keep pushing for. And the one thing for me is just we need to be gentle with each other. We need to care for the other, whether it's in business, in relationships, just going out into the street, whatever it is. I care deeply about that. That's my why. I don't want people to get hurt. I don't want people to be sad, miserable, hurt, annoyed, whatever. Yes, that's the people pleaser in me too. There's a whole range of where that goes. And there's the healthy side where I can help and coach people and create great projects. And there's the unhealthy side where I feel like a little bug when I'm not doing something for someone, right? There's a whole range there. And I sometimes have a choice of where that goes. And sometimes I don't feel like I have a choice of where it goes. I do have a choice of how I react and what I get from it. But it can get pretty dark. It can get pretty nasty. It can feel stagnation. It can feel like you're stuck and you're not going anywhere. And those are the toughest periods where you don't really see what's going on and what's going to happen. But they're the most productive. I really don't enjoy that. It's a fact of life. But it is. They don't feel good, but great things come out of there. And I think the biggest thing that comes out of that is empathy and understanding that when you're up, high, successful, and happy, you can look down and see that one person who's feeling like you were feeling a couple of years ago. And you're like, oh, okay, I understand what you're going through. I understand that I cannot push you, that what I do doesn't do anything for you because you're your own process. And I can relate to that. I can help you feel safe there, right? I'm not going to do the journey for you. I can't fix you, but I can feel for you. I can understand that it's not always perfect. And I'm also super grateful when I'm doing great because I'm like, okay, I know what it feels like not to be here and not to feel fulfilled and not to feel useful. So feeling it now, it's like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Brian. You can appreciate more, and that's the thing with experience. It makes you very unique, and that is one of the best unique selling points in business terms to make you stand out, even though a gazillion other people do the same things, might have even gotten the same idea that you have. But the way you merge your talents and your skills and your experience and your personal connection with people, how you tell them and how you take them along the journey. Because for me, I've had so many ridiculous things in my life happen to me where I was just feeling like smacked around, like bad luck, weird people, terrible encounters, near-death encounters too. Like a lot of shit blew up in my face, and I needed that because I didn't listen, and I was such a people pleaser, like real, sometimes literal pushover. People like push me. It was frustrating, but now I really don't want anybody to feel like that. And I do not want people to mask themselves or to pretend to be somebody else to please everybody. Like, I know the pain of it. And it was really at those lowest points where I was really, really depressed and really, desperate, really, that I just let all go. And I had no expectation. I had no feelings. I was wholly numb. And I just encountered all of these amazing beings who just popped up into my path and just let me share my woes. They just listened patiently, or they just helped me in my business when I didn't even ask for it. And they just helped me along just in the most serendipitous moments. And I'm so grateful for them. And I just really learned that it's okay that I am myself, even at my messiest points. There's still people who like that. And I was like, the first time I learned that, because I always felt like I had to censor myself to some degree to be still tolerated by even friends and family. And then a literal stranger at the ends of the world will just say, you're fine as you are. You can cry, or you can like be silly, or you can be energetic and bubbly, and you're cool. And I'm like, wait, I can? Are you okay? Like, is this real? And so many people like reiterate that over the time, because I didn't even have the mental capacity to be anything else, to pretend anything. And so I did it. And I was like, you know what? They never see me again. It doesn't matter. And then I realized it's actually better, because now I can choose to stay in touch with them if I want to and keep this energy flowing, and then also pay it forward, right? So I can show up in that way to other people. And so now I really also want other people, anybody who interacts with me in my business or otherwise, to just help them be seen and feel good about themselves. Even if I maybe don't gel with them, I just still want you to be, I don't want to tell you how to be more palatable to me. Like, that's not my job. That's not my business. So I will still like cheer people on, and I'm much more into like collaboration instead of feeling everything is a competition. I need to prove myself. I need to be successful by someone else's terms. And it's such a wild ride because suddenly you're like flying without all of these terms and definitions. And you're like, I am now redefining things and learning from others, but also just really doing it for yourself. And there's nobody else who can do it for you. It's so weird.
I think we've been very confused ever since we started talking about competition. Like in the Roman times. I don't know when the heck we started with that, but it's not a bad thing. Like when you see the best essence of it, like if you watch the World Cup, there's a team of people who are the best, who competed against each other.
But it could be friendly too.
To even be the representatives of the country, right? So there's a whole bunch that didn't make it, but they made it. And then they had to come together to defeat the other guys. I don't think competition is bad when you know that it's about bringing the best out of people, not about crushing the other, right? So really, that kind of competition, the healthy competition, is really collaboration. Collaboration of the best you can bring and the best you can bring out of other people, right? So it's not a terrible thing, but it's terrible when you think competition is, in order for me to win, you have to lose.
Yeah, and that's we can't all have the cake. We can't all have it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's so stupid because yes, I can. I can make my own damn cake. You can make your own damn cake. We can make damn cakes together. You know, what
we can buy it from others if we don't know how to make a cake.
We can outsource it. We can go to the bakery. Like, what? We can make sandcastles. Like, what is it? I mean, you know,
exactly.
What is exactly?
I mean, and there was a time where maybe that was useful. Maybe that was needed. Maybe that was the way to go. Because again, if we look back and we erase that
survivalist,
it meant something at a time, but it's not useful anymore. We also need to be wise enough and mature enough to say that doesn't work. We don't all wear diapers all the time anymore, right? They could work, they'd be useful. They still serve the same purpose, but they're not our thing anymore, right?
Yeah, training wheels.
Put them behind. We needed them at the time, not anymore, right? We might need them eventually again, but not anymore, right? We need to be wise enough to know that, and we need to be wise enough to know that competing against each other and putting each other down is not the way to go right now. The way to go right now is connecting, collaborating, bringing the best out of ourselves. And if we see someone who's weak and who can't protect themselves, we do need to be the one who puts your hand out and says, hey, need it? Can I be of service? Can I be the one who helps you do this right now? And know that it's not personal if you get a no. And that's the toughest part for some of us who are like this huge heart trying to help everybody and save everybody. You're not going to be able to do that for everybody. You may not even be able to do it for someone else right now. You may need to do it for yourself at first. And that's the toughest part. And I think helping yourself and being kind to yourself is probably like a million times harder for those of us who are empaths and who are like really connected to others than it should be. We really should know, like when you're traveling on a plane, that they say to put your oxygen mask first and then do it on others. Every time I heard it when I was growing up, I was like, no, but what if they need it? What if they're weaker? What if they're... And then I learned. Life taught me enough to make sure I had my oxygen mask on because you can't help others. And especially if you're creative, that's the biggest thing that I learned. You cannot create, and this totally goes against Van Gogh and a lot of the hard, dark creatives, but you cannot create from a place of lack and from a place of void and emptiness.
Yeah.
I mean, you might create a wonderful poem that's super heart-wrenching, but it will not get to where it needs to go. It will not create the impact that you need to create.
Also, it would be just detrimental to yourself. Like, at what cost?
that is the biggest thing. And I think when we talk about the why, the second question is at what cost?
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna do this, you've seen it with artists a lot of times, Whitney Houston, at what
Mhm.
cost were you gonna be the best?
Yeah.
Lance Armstrong,
Britney
cycling,
Spears.
at what cost? At what cost? Like you can see so many things that ended up with their existence or their happiness or their family or their mental health or their
Right.
whatever, right? Their body, whatever it was it worth it? Is it really what you want to have? And some people might say yes. There's a lot of, especially adventurous people who say, yes, even if I get killed by climbing Mount Everest, that was the thing I need to do. Well, fine by me. That was your why. You thought that was it. That we cannot disrespect that.
Yeah.
But the majority of people want to stay alive and they want to be happy and healthy and understood and connected and surrounded by people who love them, right? That's
Yeah.
usually the goal. That's really what success looks like. It's not the millions. It's actually what you create around you and what you can sustain that makes you feel good, right? Um, but sometimes we get lost in the path of things, and it's okay. I need to do this because I need to make money, and I need to make money to keep my family alive. Yeah, but you also need to keep a family happy. They might not be alive even if they have a lot of money. You might not be alive if you just work all the time and you get sick, right? And I think
Yeah. Or if you never see your kids and you just provided them the food and then just they never had the emotional nourishment. Like that's a classic.
right, right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, there was a time when that was the rule. Not anymore. Times have changed in such a way that it's very, very contrasting, and especially for men. I think women have had even though we've had more hardships as a
Hmm.
collective,
Yeah.
we also learned a lot more from them.
Yeah. Because
It
we
had
had to also.
Yes, it was just it was a
It
choice,
comes with the lack of certain privileges. So,
right? But on the other hand, I feel sorry for men a lot of the time because
yeah.
they haven't had to learn, and now they're just catching up and getting the slap in the face. Like,
Right. And they
yeah,
don't
where did
even
that come
see
from?
exactly. They never had the need to question all of that because it was cushy.
Right, right, and it wasn't comfortable, but they thought that that was the way it was. So
Yeah.
now getting into the new reality where you're given a chance to feel, when you're given a chance to be part of the family, when you're given
Yeah.
a chance to matter to your kids and show up and really have a relationship with them other than I provided you with
Yeah.
what you needed to survive.
Exactly. As long as you live under my roof, you live by my
Right,
rules. And like, yeah,
right,
I can move out. I'm like, wait, what? Why do my kids never call me in my retirement home? And you're like,
right,
you never really raised the kids. They were just human beings that you patronized.
right. Yeah, it was literally you were the patron. That's all you did. You just paid for them to keep going.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the thing. That's why I think the why is so important. And I know that a lot of people say, "Well, I do it for my family." No, you don't. Why are you doing it for your family? You're doing it because you love your family?
Or you're afraid they will not love you back.
Yeah, or you're gonna be afraid of what people will say if you lose your family. Like, there's a lot of I do it for my family. Really?
There's always deeper. We're like, but why? Like, what? There's always, and like this questioning of where you're like, so what? Like the worst case scenario, kind of like, okay, so what if
Right.
they didn't love you? Okay, so what if that happened? But what if
Right.
that happened? So like you just go down and down, like
Right.
really like great on your heartstrings. But at the end of the core, you just like go to the basic needs, like, oh, I just want to be seen, or I just want to be understood. I just want to be heard. Like it's usually one of those, like seen, heard, understood, loved. That's at the
Right.
core of it. And the fear of rejection overall, I feel like that's the main motivator. But like just again, it comes back to finding your own worth in yourself and being compassionate towards yourself so you can practice it on yourself and then extend it to other people and
Right.
learn it from other people by putting yourself in those positions like I was in when people just
Mm-hmm.
showered me with this love and I was like, I don't know you, who are you? Like, why are you so nice? Because I wasn't used
Yes.
to that unconditional, like, you know,
Acceptance and love.
yeah, I was like, I don't even know the words right now. It's just like, it's so weird. I love it. But yeah. Like these things just can be triggering on both ends where you're like, gets you a little too much when you're not used to it either way.
And we're very used to making fear our why, right? Like even the case of I do it for my family because I'm afraid that they will not have what they need to survive, right? That's really at the core of the sentence. But you can actually shift that totally around. And I'm doing this because I want my kids to be happy, because I want my kids to learn that work is a productive, positive thing, not something you have to do. I'm doing this because I want my children to learn that if you're passionate about something, you can live of it, right? There's so many ways that you can go deeper into the why. And I know just even for myself, like I love music. When I started working with musicians and artists, I was like, why are you doing it? Well, because I don't want them to go through what saw my artists go through or my friends who wanted to be artists. I don't want people to go through what they had to go through. And that was fear-based. That was not the right angle, but that was my why at the time because that's what I thought was my why. But then I learned, no, I'm doing it because I love music, because I want music to be seen and heard and experienced. And it's not just music. I love that we can connect one human being with the other. And I love that what I learned can be shared through something other than a lecture, right? It could be a story, it could be a painting, it could be all these other things. And I want people to be able to do that. So I'm doing things because of that. So my why from I don't want people to go through this shifted all the way to because I want people to be able to do this.
And that's the power of the words and the power of just like a part of like manifesting when you just reframe things and take a positive spin while being mindful of not making it toxic positivity, but just, attracting something that you actually want instead of trying to repel something that you don't, because then you're still fixated on the what not to do. Like, oh, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. Then your mind's still in that zone and might actually give you what you don't want because you keep thinking about it and telling it that that's what you're thinking about. Because the mind sometimes doesn't like to hear not. It just ignores it. Like kids, tell the kid, don't climb the tree. It was like, tree, okay, I'll do it. And you're like, no, don't climb the tree. Don't touch the hot pot. Don't. And they just like reframe it. How about we stay on the ground and do some jumping jacks? I don't know. How about we keep our hands to ourselves to like be safe? Just the way you reframe things. It's the same thing, but it has a different impact. And the same
just like
goes for yourself.
Yeah, the way you were framing it exactly actually teaches us that there's also a process. Because sometimes you're just not ready to get clear on your why yes. The why not, right? So, and we know this from just raising kids. You start, or even dogs. Half of what you do with your dog training first is saying no.
Yeah, and kids have to go through that phase to self-identify.
So, exactly. And the same thing happens for ourselves. We need to know what we don't like to figure out what we do like. And then we can ask, why do I like it? Why do I want to do this? And I actually, when I was starting to do social research, I had this survey because I was convinced that people could switch from one career to the next and still be who they were at their core. And I was trying to figure it out. And I did this survey where the first thing I asked was, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you dream of being when you were a kid?
I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And then I saw how hard work it was. I was like, nah.
But here's the thing. There's a reason why you wanted to be a ballet dancer. And it probably was not ballet, right? Because when you learn how hard it was.
I tried it. I love dancing and I love the music and the expression and the community aspect of it.
And I just said all the things that stay true to this day. You love the music, you love the dancing, and you love the community, right? So at the core of what you wanted when you were a kid is who you are right now. It may not have translated into it directly, right? It's not in your face like, oh yeah, ballet dancer has everything to do with what I'm doing right now.
No. Videography, it's the same to me, but like for other people will be like, what? I know. I do videos for fun to bond with people and to like externalize my thoughts so they can understand me or I can help other people understand. And then music is a way to transport all of that, to mesh it all together beautifully.
Right. And it's the same thing that ballet does. It translates that
Yeah.
emotion into a movement that's seen by others, right?
Wow. I would have never seen that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's so
See,
fun.
but that's the fun part of it, that it's so inside ourselves. And it usually goes with, yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut. Why? Because I wanted to go to the moon. Really? You had no idea what the moon really was. No, you wanted to be an astronaut because the outfits were cool, because
Adventure.
people were adventurous. Yeah, there's
You could be
other
Cirque du Soleil. Maybe it's about the
right.
being in space. Or like
Right.
literally
There's so many
floating.
things. Yeah, there's so many things that could go with that and that are connected to all these things that you felt as a kid. And I always go back to what you feel as a kid because you didn't really know. It was just this thing that was calling you, that was calling your attention, that was calling up to what you
Right.
wanted to become.
And like
that's
the limited
influence.
worldview of it
Mhm.
as well. Like you don't know all of the options and still we don't know. Like 20 years ago, what is a blog? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest thing because if anyone had asked me what I wanted to be when I was younger, I would always tell them I wanted to do a business and it would be like in a bank or something because I wanted to work with people from all over the world. That's what I do. But what I do right now didn't exist by then. So
Yeah.
I couldn't have said, oh, I want to run a business online where I can connect with my people all over the planet while still being at home.
Exactly. Or even like two months ago, I was like, oh, I wish I could work with photography with people who are not in Germany, which is where I am. And then last month I found out there's a thing such as virtual photography. So you can literally take photos of anybody in the world as soon as they give me internet and their phone access. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait,
Right.
what?
And there's so many new things that we have no idea of
Right.
that people will be able to experience as their business and their livelihood for years to come. That if you stay with this super narrow-minded version of architect, lawyer, and scientist, or whatever it is that you have in your mind that it's what you can do, that's not going to feel right. And the world will change and you will not be able to find where you fit because you're using a totally different language. But if you sit with your intuition, if you actually learn who you are, then whatever it is that you find a chance to do or that you have to do, because there are times like we had during the pandemic where you couldn't do what you wanted to do, but there were 25 versions of what you did that you could do, right? And that could be helpful and valuable and sustainable in all these other things that you were not aware of. And you were pushed to the limit to find that out. Well, as we've said before, if you're not listening, if you're not adjusting kindly to little nudges, to little sources of inspiration, then it gets bigger and it's more painful and it makes you draw your attention because there's no other way to look, right? So there's a lot of ways to get there, but the least painful one, and least painful meaning you're not spared from anything, right? You can still feel the feels and get in trouble and get tired and exhausted and drained and overwhelmed. That can still happen even if you're doing the thing you love the most. But it's a totally different experience when you are operating from, I know this is what I need to be doing right now. Other than, well, maybe this is what I should do, right? It's a totally different approach. It doesn't spare you from everything.
And it's also outside forces. You're not listening to yourself. Like should, could, would have, like, it's hypothetical. Like what is,
Right.
you know, it's a
Has it
good
happened?
scapegoat. Yes, it's a potential, but is it something that you actually see as a probability that you actually feel aligned to and called to? It's just, you know, a segue of sorts to excuse yourself in case it doesn't work out because you didn't really want to do it or somebody else told you. It's a cheap way out, and I use it a lot, so like I can say that. But
And you know, I'm a recovering control freak. I
yeah,
loved having everything under control, and when I started working music production, I learned
especially
that
with creatives, you can't.
everything could go wrong at any time.
Oh, that's the baseline I'm operating on. As soon as I do videos, there's always something going on. I'm just waiting for it to happen. And then
It can happen, But you know what? The best thing that comes out of that when you really learn to live with it is that some of the best moments, some of the best things, some of the best experiences were totally unplanned.
Always.
And they could
To
have
me,
been
always.
in the middle of chaos. And you make the best relationships, the best connections. You find the best in people in those times. Yeah, the worst also comes up. But if you know where to look, if you still have that drive to find what's best in this scenario, you'll find amazing things. You'll find amazing people. You'll find amazing things within yourself that you didn't know you had them in you. And you're like, wait, where did that come from? Was that me? I don't know that person, but I kind of like her, right?
Right.
So it does the same thing as in your sleep, right? It's the moment where you just surrender and you're like, I have no control over this.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Exactly.
what the magic
Turn off your head. Just react. Exactly. That's why I love this creative chaoticness. Like, especially that's why I like outdoor photography and videography. And I've done it before the pandemic when I was like on location around various countries in the world and did a shoot. And then everything went wrong, right? The equipment maybe didn't work, or the sun was too bright, or it was raining, or like we were like followed by some ghosts and like, what the heck? I don't know. You know, like random stuff.
Will all the electrics stop working? Yeah.
Yes, and then I don't know, your clothes were ripped or they had like rust stains. You're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and then you just work in this tight constraint, and it just pushes your creative limits. And it's just really, I both love and hate it, but it gives you the best work when you have to be really resourceful. You have to really work with something that pushes you over the edge. Because my brain is always over time. It's just constantly noisy. It's very judgy. It's a loud place. But when I'm like really in that zone where I'm like, F it, I will make this happen. I don't care at all. And then I just become this kind of, I don't even want, like, I sometimes call it zombie mode, where I'm like, I get blinders on and I will do it.
Focused, yeah.
It is hyper focused, yeah. It freaks people out now that I know what it is and that how it connects to my ADHD. Like, I can give words to it, but it just literally, I'd switch. Become a different person, and I will tell even people tell me I can't socialize right now. I will be super direct. I might be the boss bitch right now, but I will get the shit done, and I need to get it done because I have no patience at all. Like, we get the shit done and like it will be great and the result will be great. Like, the process might be messy and feel a bit awkward. Like, even when I remember when I was traveling for the first time to Stockholm, because I was living in Sweden. Like, again, one of my typical segues, like that makes sense in my head. But yeah. So I was working and living in Sweden, and like with a couple of friends, we decided to go to Stockholm, and they gave all of the planning to me, which is either a big mistake or a good one. Depends on like how your travel.
Depends on how willing you are to just let go or not. Yeah.
Yes, because at that time I was a type A. Everything was planned down to the minute. Everything was maximized in all of the things we could see in this time frame, and I had scheduled everything out. I knew all of the ways like we needed to get from A to B. I had like looked it up on Google. I had like accounted for different delays. Like it was, I don't even know. It was impressive actually. It's scary, but it's impressive. I'm not doing that anymore, only sometimes. And they were like, they hated it. They were like, oh my god, my feet hurt. This is awful. Like, this is so. But we saw so much, so many random stuff too. Like, we saw all of the highlights, we saw all of the weirdest stuff that I could possibly find. We went on different islands, we went to this outdoor museum, we went to castles, we saw like so many different things, and they were exhausted. And I have like gazillion photos and so much great memories. And after the fact, they were like, you know what, after a week or so, they stopped talking to me for a bit. And then after the week passed, they were like, you know what, I'm still super exhausted. This was mental, but I've had a great time now, actually, in retrospect, and I would have never seen even a fraction of the stuff that you put into this tiny itinerary. You're so mad, but I loved it because they were like, this energy is crazy. I'm like, yes, but I do not want to keep this up anymore. I do not recommend it. But like, you know, stuff can happen if you just really determine and actually, you know, accept the flow. And it's also, on a side note, important to know who you travel with. Like, really, you're not always competitive. Like, travel is like one of the biggest trial error things for any relationship. I always say, like, if you are serious about a relationship or friendship,
travel with a person, for sure. Yeah.
And see, even if you don't travel the same way. But if you can make it work, because you can be like, yeah, I love museums and I'm bored with it. I want to hang out on the beach, whatever. But if you go like, you do you, I do me, we can still hang out and like eat food because we're both foodies. That's brilliant. But some relationships will not even make that work. They compromise on everything. So it's not a compromise, it's settling. I hate settling, but it's not a thing.
Yeah. But that's the thing though, like I learned a lot with what you were experiencing or sharing about the experience with the travels. I had that in production and different projects where there was a time where if we were clear that the focus was to make this thing happen, anything that we needed to do to make that happen was allowed and okay. Now, the one thing that I learned is that even in those scenarios, you cannot disregard that a person is valuable and that a person deserves respect. Because there's so much that we do, and I've had it happen in a lot of events, where for the sake of making this thing happen, we would yell, we would disrespect each other, and things would go totally wrong.
Yeah,
but
that's not good.
If you know people are stressed, you understand that we haven't slept, it's been 24 hours, right? There's the chaos with the airports or whatever. But you give the person like a little joke or a little chocolate or
just fire brief. Let's
that
not be
acknowledges. Yes.
Yeah, just let's go into each other's corners and take a breather, take 5 minutes.
Just allow people to be tired, allow people to be human, allow people to be seen, allow people to be people. If you just give them that chance, everything else just kind of comes into play, right? And yes, there's tough moments, especially as a leader, where you have to say, stop, this is not acceptable, this needs to happen, you need to do your job. Yes, but there's always, always, always a human positive way to do it. You might not find it at the time, you might mess up. If you do, it's super important that you go back and say, I messed up. I didn't live up to my role as a leader, as the boss, as the one who pays the checks, as whatever it is, as the one who plans the thing, right? There's a lot that can be gained from saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I was tired. I shouldn't have done it. But it's not just justifying, I was tired. It's just, I was tired. I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have told you that. You need to acknowledge that you did something wrong. Yes, there may be an explanation worth it, but that's not the most important part of it. The most important part of it is allowing to tell people you did a mistake by mistreating them, by yelling at them, by undermining them, by putting them below you.
Yeah.
Anyway, right?
It's emotional maturity.
Yeah. And the same thing goes like when you travel with a friend and you might mess up with something, right? We have different styles, we have different things. There's some things that are very stressing for us, like maybe going through customs or flying in a plane. Some people don't feel comfortable flying or in a boat or whatever it is. And you might have to just suck it up at the time. But afterwards, you can go back and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I know you hate this. I know you didn't have a great time with this, but I meant to do this. And then they'll come back probably and say something what your friend said, right? Like, hey, I'm super exhausted still, but I appreciate what you did because it allowed me to do this.
Yeah, just transparency, communication, and like honoring boundaries even of yourself. Because sometimes, especially in those stressful situations, it's so easy to ignore your own needs. Like if I'm in hyper focus, I will forget to go to the toilet to eat and drink. I will literally, like, sometimes it's even 8 hours straight. I will not be a human. I will actually be a zombie. I had occasionally when I was in hyper focus in like the most random hostels in Australia, I was sitting there working and I didn't move at all. Only my hands moved. And I was like staring. I forgot to blink and everything. Like, why are my eyes so dry? Yes. And then people would go party at, I don't know, 7 p.m. or like whatever people party. I didn't even notice time, right? I was working. And then they came back at whatever time and I was still sitting there. And they would be like, what? And to me, no time had passed because time blindness exists to me, ADHD, right? But also like, it is scary. So it's really helpful to have people gently nudging you. If somebody would have like tapped me and like janked me out of this, I would have snapped at it. I would have been like, you can't take me out of hyperfocus. This is awful. But if you can communicate that in advance, like when you see me do this, don't be scared, but maybe like push like a glass in my vision that I can like drink it or whatever, or like remind me, how does your belly feel? Like, do you have any kind of feelings at all?
Right.
And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, because I get totally numb. My brain stops connecting. And if people are like, if you ask me, I'm hungry, I would say no. But if they ask me like, how do you feel? I'm like, in pain.
Right. And that happens a lot when you're in the zone, that this hyper focus, which is really when people get in the zone in whatever line of work they are, like surgeons who can go for 12, 14 hours into a continuous operating focus. That happens to all of us, and especially, and this is something that it's great that you brought it up, because when you find your passion, when you're doing that thing that you're super passionate about, don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't underestimate the value of sleep and eat and relationships and communication, and not doing that thing all the time, because we do need to be a human in all aspects of our humanity. And that means sleep and eat and conversation and relationships. We do need that, because we can get too much in the zone. We can get, again, the swing of the pendulum from not doing what you love to doing exactly what you wanted, but doing it all the time is a lot. So you do need to take care of yourself, and you need to know, like, when you're in the zone, what do you need to be tapped out, right?
Right. Yeah.
And when it's appropriate and when it just has to continue going, right?
Exactly.
But you need to find that balance, and you need to be very honest. Again, intuition is not just knowing these big choices of where you go. Intuition is also knowing all of your body, like knowing that when my body does this, I'm exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
That when
That's
my
why you
mind
need to feel your
does
feelings.
this, I'm overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
That when I'm doing this kind of behavior, it means I need to talk to a friend. I need personal relationships, right? But that comes from really sitting with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Getting to know yourself in the deepest, darkest, and in the best moments, and getting to know what nudges you need to pay attention to. And again, that usually doesn't come from the best and brightest moments. It comes from how low can I go? Right.
Oh, yeah. I can dig really well, it turns out.
And it's not enjoyable. It's definitely not enjoyable. It's not a process that is great. And I know a lot of us.
But it can feel like satisfying on some like perverted level. Like you're just like,
in a very twisted way, it's super fascinating. And I know, especially people who tend to think like worst case scenario, right? I'm the kind of person who plans out everything that could go wrong.
Oh, yeah. Instead of just what could go right. That might be a good reframe, but my mind defaults to the worst and very graphic detail.
But usually, I know, it's super painful, but it's also enriching. It's a way of your mind to tell you that it has all this knowledge that prepares you for all of those things. So if you just acknowledge your mind and tell it, okay, thank you, you're giving me all that info because you want me to be safe, one.
Yes.
And second, because you're telling me all the things I know. Right.
Invest it into all the things that could happen. Let's just go wild there, please.
And sometimes you need to sit with that and go there and allow your mind to go there, but then you need to bring it back. You need to be able to refocus it. And again, that's where the why comes up.
Yeah.
Why would I do this if all of those things can happen? Right?
Yeah.
Well, because I want to do this, because this is important to me, because it will lead to this, because this person is there, because this relationship is there, right? If you go back to that why, then you can reframe. If you don't have the why, it's super complicated. And the other thing I wanted to say about the why is sometimes it's not something huge. Actually, most of the time, it's not something huge. Why? Because I want to be happy. Why? Because I want to be fed. Right?
Yeah. I think those are like the most important ones, really, you know, at the core of it. I keep hearing now, just like maybe the purpose of life is, you know, you can be like a big healer or activist or whatever. Yeah. But at the core of it, it's just like what makes you happy right now. Like it seems so selfish in this, you know, society, but essentially it's just like what makes you happy, because of your intuition will pull you in that direction, so you can vibe at that frequency, you can attract that kind of abundance, and then you can see the opportunities and the potential, and then you can see the lack, And you can be like, no, I want to fix that. I want to like close that gap. I want to fill in that hole. I want to shine that light because it makes me happy, because you can give your oxygen mask because you're already wearing yours. You know, you can just spread that joy because you're already on that level of possibility. So yeah.
And the funny thing is, the more you do that, the more you experience that, the more you learn that those times where you thought you were an outcast, you were the exception, you were different, it turns out you weren't really that different to this whole series of other people
So many millions
who
of
are
us.
going through the same thing, who are thinking the same thing, who are feeling the same feelings, who like the same kind of situations, scenarios, music, stories, whatever it is. There's so much more that connects you to people than what separates you. And even those things that separate you from them, allow them to compensate for what you cannot or do not know how to do. So it's really, I can't emphasize this enough. The more I learn how we all are like little pieces that come together for great reasons,
Yeah.
and at the right moment, and you don't see it at the time, or you're not able to see it beforehand, you're always better off seeing it afterwards. And you're like, oh my gosh, when that person jumped into my life, it like everything kind of took place. And in spite of being a person that you just met for 5 minutes, that just realigned everything around you, it doesn't have to be the person that's with you for the next, or I don't know, 20 years or whatever. But everything comes into place. Everything has a reason. There's definitely a bigger plan. There's definitely a unity that kind of controls and includes it all. But I think it's great that we don't get to see it all, because that way we're humble and we can allow for the other to exist and be and become important. But it's also important for us to go back and say, well, maybe this is connected. Maybe this is important. Maybe what I am going to put out, what I'm going to create, what I'm thinking about right now matters. If nothing else, as someone needed to think it. Someone needed to be in that frequency at that time for whatever reason that I cannot see. And even sometimes if you're like an intuitive person and someone who does healing or who creates in order to enhance or improve something, sometimes you just need to sit with the thought of what could be better for that to just be brought to the collective. And you'll probably see it in the news like 3 days later that something good happened and it was kind of in the lines of what you were thinking, or you'll hear an interview with someone saying something like that. You'll be like, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. That thought needed to happen. That imagination, that dream needed to happen, right? But you don't usually see it, and that's the hard part. That's a complicated process when you feel like you're the only one doing this, the only one who cares about this, the only one who thought about this, right? You're not the only one, but yeah, most of the time you won't be able to see it clearly.
And that's why community is so important. And that's one aspect that I love about social media, because it just brings together all of this scattered communities who have all of these feelings of isolation. And then suddenly you're like, wait, you do that too? I do that too. Like with me in the ADHD, like all of the things that I had been shamed for in my childhood that were attributed as my flaws, I now know are symptoms, and there's nothing right or wrong about it. It just is. And now that I know there's medical terms, which kind of, explains the thing and validates my experience, and all of these other people will like share their experiences, that I feel seen, like it's healing a part of my soul, and it's helping me affirm myself and find the people who find that kind of cute or like nice about just making it into this kind of manic pixie dream girl persona, which again feels very detached from an actual human being. Like all of these people, like the people who are nomadic and they have this weird sense of gathered identity because you're fractured all the pieces and left them in all of the countries you've been to and left your heart in, right? And then my thing is always when I come home and have the reverse culture shock, which I think is I still don't see it talked about as much as the culture shock, but you expect that, but you don't expect it to hit you when you come back and suddenly you feel like you're an alien in your own home.
Right.
And then people don't want to meet you at the new place that you're at because they're comfortable seeing you in the way they already saw you and then treating you the same way. And then you have this weird disconnect with yourself and identity crisis because you've been
Right.
like enlightened in some way.
Right.
And you can't explain it. You cannot give that concept to other people. I tried. I failed.
It's just, and it's funny because it happened all the time. Like, as long as humans have moved from one place to the next, whatever one place was and the next is, right? Could be anywhere from the towns into the big cities. It could be from town A to town B, where there's a river and when there's no river, right? Whatever it is, there has always been that shock and that growth because it's a growth. You have experienced something that the people behind have not experienced yet. It's just that you've seen life in a way that others haven't seen it yet.
Right.
And
or even with marriage, suddenly like you're
right,
into a different family.
exactly.
Like, even like
Exactly.
like 100 years ago, suddenly you were like completely transplanted. Boom.
Right.
You have to adjust? No.
Exactly. But that's precisely what enriched our personalities, our traditions, our humanity. That interchange of moving from here to there, and a very cruel and objectified way it happened with marriages, right? It was just like, place women here from here, right? Insert
Yeah.
to keep the blood fresh,
So
whatever.
insert
it was, right?
cash, they get a wedding.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
But we
very
get this
transactional.
new human with this new set of things that
Right.
brings value to our community. It's a very tough, weird, objectified way of seeing it.
Yes,
We
but
even
it's
knew it then.
and you like that's what it was rooted in, transaction, property. That's what marriage
It was rooted in
stemmed
that.
from.
But it had an actual good thing in it. The actual good thing was, I'm bringing something valuable that's new into my community that I needed. I need something new in my community. Yeah, to breed a different kind of person. Yeah, it had something to do along those lines to bring up power alliance. Yeah, but it was an alliance. It was collaboration.
Yeah.
You
Not
needed to
always
have
on equal
that one
terms,
here.
but yeah.
It was totally messed up. I mean, it was
Yeah.
wrong in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's totally destructive. But it goes back to even this messed up thing that was super destructive brought something good. It was actually, it could have been taken into the right direction. It was giving you always the chance to see it as a collaboration and not, what can I get out of you?
Right.
Right?
That's why I love matriarchal cultures.
Yep.
Doing something different.
Yep. But it's about that. It's about learning. What have we done wrong? And what have we done right? And why did we do it? Because even in some matriarchal organizations,
they're not all
why was not so clear and nice, right?
Yeah, no,
So-
there's no.
But when we
Perfect.
get the why right, the how really just lines up.
Yeah.
Because there's things that you will not endure. There's things you will not tolerate. You will not accept. You will not recompensate even. But only if you have the why clear. And that means really getting to know. And again, intuition is not just for yourself. It's also for your tribe, your group, your project, your business. If you don't know it, if you don't know how it operates and what it suffers from, right? Because you need to be very honest about that. And sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you need a consultant, a coach, a friend, a pastor, whatever it is people use. You need sometimes someone to see it from the outside because there's a lot of noise going on, right?
Oh, yeah. And we can fool ourselves so greatly. We're
we're
so
great.
adept at that. But it's also the fact that now I lost my train of thought. But
External
what did I
guide.
want to say? And it was just there and it poof,
It disappeared.
appeared. It was a good point. Where'd it go?
Really did.
Did I fall it? What did we talk about? I lost it.
We were talking about just getting the external point of view and getting clear on what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, like, there's people who are more attuned to this anyway, just naturally. I think everybody has intuition and just naturally pre-installed, like, survival,
Right.
all attached, right?
Right.
But some people are just born with much more of that
Yeah.
attunement, and it is really helpful to, like, get everybody on board. Like, there's the logical kind of people, the creative kind of people, like the spiritual kind of people. And that, again, we can learn from everybody in some way. We can all tune into whatever we need from some certain source, and then everybody can help. Again, this is a collaborative effort where you can, like, trust. I don't know why you give me this reasoning, but I feel that your intuition is right, and so I'm gonna go with it. So sometimes it's just actually not having blind faith in yourself, but also in other people, and actually trusting them with your safety in that way too, because they can, like, lead you astray. They can give you the Kool-Aid, you know? So
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is
both.
you will hear from them what you need to hear from them,
Yeah, the Barnum
and then
effect is
you
also
will
strong.
do your choice of, okay, I heard this because I wanted to go against it. I heard this because I need to use this, all of it,
Filter it.
or just this tiny little bit, right? You will be the filter, and that's where your intuition is working even when you don't know it,
Yeah.
right?
'Cause you
When you
can
reject
sense.
something or accept something, there's a reason for it, right? So again, it doesn't mean that intuition just makes everybody obsolete, right? Everyone else doesn't matter. No, they matter because they will bring things in that you need to hear right now, either to say yes or no, or to just feed something that you needed to connect with and amplify or minimize or whatever it is you need to do take the next step or make the next choice, right?
Yeah.
So there's a reason for that, and there's a lot inside of you that connects with the outside and what you're getting as feedback, what you're getting as advice, as instructions even, right? There's things that make you repel, and you need to know why you're going against them. It might be the super simple thing, like don't touch that, and you're like, oh, but I really want to touch it.
Now I do.
Why do I want to touch it? What the heck is wrong with me when I know that's breakable and I will have
Don't say what the heck is wrong with you. Don't say that.
I don't, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's usually where your mind goes.
Oh yeah.
What's wrong with me? And it's not what's wrong with me. It's what's in me that's telling me do this or don't do this, that wants to do it. Why is it there? Sometimes it's simpler than we thought, and sometimes it's really deeply rooted, and it really needs to be listened to and paid attention to. But yeah, and definitely the first thing that our minds know is what's wrong with me, and that's not the right question. That is so not the wrong question. The right question. It's not what's wrong with me. It's why am I getting this? Why am I thinking this? Where is this coming from? Because if it comes up, just like inspiration to create, if it's coming up, there's a reason. If you want to drive to that place, there's a reason. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you're going to meet someone. Maybe you had to be there, right? There's so many things that could be even as simple as that's the best you're going to get an offer. I don't know, whatever it is.
Or it's good marketing.
Or you're just making a marketer happy because what they did was right. That's
right.
also...
Again, listen to your intuition, because you can, like, see tactics from a mile away. I always just like, that is an interesting technique. If I didn't know that technique, I would fall for it. I've always been smug when I spot it. I'm like, haha, I know this trick. Right. But anyway, yeah.
Sometimes I spot it when I'm buying it, but that's okay. Right? It happens anywhere along the journey. But yeah, in the end is just being honest about who you are and what you want and why you want it. But yeah, I've always been a why kind of person. I always asked why, even when I was super, super young. The why was my question. It was my way to go. Yeah. So
so many people don't like it, especially if you keep asking it. Yeah. But that's what I do to understand the world. It's a curious place. So I'm a curious person, and I need to ask curious questions. Got it?
And again, it's how we complement each other. There's people who are obsessed with the how.
Oh yeah,
we need them, right?
The scientists, yes.
Yeah, and there's people who really need to know what, and we really need that. Again, it's how we complete each other, and we can change the question every now and then, and it's perfectly fine. But that's the thing. It's not judging ourselves and being so hard on ourselves that it's like we totally shut out our intuition, or we shut out our intellect, and we cannot do that either. You cannot just operate with one or the other. We're very complete human beings. And that's the wonder of it. That's the magic of it. That's really the richness that we have, that we can operate with our brains, with our hearts, with our bodies, with our energies, with just going in the spur of the moment, and don't even know what that's like. And I really want to focus on that, because when you see insects or animals, and especially birds, right, when they're like flying in this huge flocks, and you're like, how do they do that? How do they communicate in seconds and switch directions? And I used to think we as humans were not able to do that, because usually even talking, we don't understand each other. But I was so mind blown. We had an earthquake in Mexico City in 2017, and it was really devastating in some areas. And it happened to hit the area where a lot of foreigners were living, in a very central colony here in Mexico City. And it was amazing to see people that didn't understand each other going through the motions of the food chains and water supply chains. And it was so quiet. It was so eerie, because everybody was quiet to try to find survivors. But it was magical to see people from completely different paths of life, different parts of the world, different experiences. And we didn't have to say a word. We would actually do what we needed to do and move things to the place where we needed to move them. And it was like, so it can be done. We actually do have it.
Yeah. I mean, we are all just herd animals that, we're just like groups. Like we haven't really evolved all that much from a biological from when we were like cave people. We were a collective. We needed to survive as a community, and we had hunters and the gatherers, and they were not as clear cut as some people want you to believe. But there's like specialties. Like there's a shaman, like shaman. I haven't say that.
Shaman. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Right.
my brain. Anyway, spiritual people, and then there's a leader, and then there's the fighters and the warriors.
Right.
It's just all of these different people, and there's this current theme in the neurospicy community right now that it's like, oh, maybe we were the ones who were like on watch at night because we were night owls, and we have like all of these hypersensitivities, and like I don't know if that's true, but again, it just shows us that because we try to put people in all of these boxes and what we like to call neurotypical behavior, it just actually makes us less of a community. It alienates us. It also rips apart the people who are not fitting in. If you have a different skin color, if you have a different accent, if you have a different socioeconomic background, all of these things, they shouldn't take away from a good life. They can actually enrich it if you let it. But a lot of people see change as threatening, which also is a very biological thing that we need to just be mindful of.
We've tried to put even human beings in a different, very special box that keeps us apart from the environment and other animals and whatever. And it's not that easy. If we don't embrace that we are an animal, we're a living creature, we're a social creature, we're spiritual, we're energy, we're all these very complex things put together in this tiny antenna that kind of emanates things everywhere and interacts with everything. That's what makes us shock ourselves so much and say, oh, you're different. No, I'm just connecting to something different right now that is needed for all of us right now. It's not that I'm wrong. It's not that I can't do things. It's just that I operate differently. And the more we value that, the more we understand that, we're going to be happier. And we're also way more productive. That's the little catch to all of what we're advocating with more humanity and attention to emotions.
Base of innovation. It's not just keeping things as they are.
Yeah, and
it's
even
disrupting it.
For those who love the principle of efficiency, it's putting your best resources at doing what they do best.
Yeah.
It's just
efficiency.
It's even economically
it's necessary. And that's like also one of my things, like when I go to, like, now I'm self-employed, but like when I went into like already pre-established institutions and I worked there, I would just look at things, I'm like, makes no sense to me. Why do we do this? And they did tell me that I'm like, makes no sense to me. Why don't we do this way? Or like, why don't we stop this middle step? Like, cut it out, like, do all of these things. And people looked at me, I'm like, don't rock the boat. I'm like, makes no sense to me. You're all inefficient.
Right.
Like in my mind, I didn't even dare speak up. Like, I would just question and get like pushback. And I'm like, I thought you wanted to be economical. I thought you wanted productivity, but you just keep me drained in this weird limbo where I can't even optimize it. And so I get burned out trying to keep in a mellow state. Like people, for me specifically, when I work and I'm interested in it, I be super fast and then I'm in need of a break. And so like I work really fast. It's like I get, if I'm really hyper focused, I will get a week's worth done really fast. It doesn't make sense. I don't know how this works at times. But then I also need like a couple days off. And then people are like, I cannot work at 100% or whatever ridiculous thing they always tell you. This is not how my work and my brain applies. And then, yeah. And then they were like, no, you need to like keep it at a medium level. And then I would just perform at like 20 all the time because I cannot get the momentum to do anything. And I would be miserable and you would see it on my face. I do not have a poker face. Everybody knows my business all the time. And then I would get pushback on that. I'm like, what do you want? Either you want me to work at my full capacity and the way I need to work and you get actual stuff done, and even more so, because at the same time, I redecorated the entire office and I established an entire new event. And I also hosted a like this thing and that thing at the same time. And like, what do you want? Do you want me to be a miserable office worker? Because that's definitely not aligned. That's what you get. And
we know that is really creating the biggest shift in how people work. Because we are adapting to what we need to be productive as opposed to what a system needs to be productive. We're really migrating there. It's going to take a while. Some organizations, some countries are better prepared for that. Some societies are more prepared for that. Some are more enabled even to make that change. But it will happen whether we're ready or not, just because we are being braver and more honest with what we need.
I love Gen Z for that. I love that.
Yeah, and it really will become the rule, not the exception, the more we go into things. But again, it's not happy, it's not smooth, it's not easy. There's resistance, and there's reasons for resistance as well. We need to be very mindful of that. Why things have worked in a certain way and why they haven't.
Yeah, you can't just discard it and start from square one, because then we can't.
It's like deleting all your first videos from YouTube, right? It's the same thing. You cannot just say that didn't exist.
Yeah, because it shaped me too.
Work, right? So it doesn't work, but we know why it doesn't work. Again, we really get to take the time to think about it, and don't just disregard our dark side as a society or as a community or as human beings, as a whole civilization, right? You cannot just disregard what you didn't like from it, but you can't also hyper-focus on, oh, this is what we are. No, because we are all of those things too. And
we're changed, or we can redefine, or we can like fortify certain values, maybe.
Yeah. That's a lot of. I know there's a lot to go with that, but it really just comes back to being totally honest about who you are,
right?
And what you play in this huge plan of humanity and civilization and the planet and all of that we have interaction with, really, because we are super complex and super valuable, and the more people that are multi-passionate, right? All people are multi-passionate, even when we have hyper-focus every now and then.
Yeah, we have specialists, but they still have different interests. They're not a robot.
Even if you're a super scientist, you're maybe super passionate about chess or what you eat or something. Whatever else. Like, we know that, right? A human has more than one passion, even if there's one main one that really drives you. So yeah, we should normalize that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we covered so much. This is nearly 2 hours. Look at us. I could keep going, but I think we need to stop it.
I know.
Give the listeners a break. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But I wanted to give a shout out to you having written a book, and it's all about all of those things we talked about, like really being in touch with your soul and following that inner light, basically. Do you want to do a quick rundown on what it
real
is?
quick shout out. Yeah, it's the ultimate soulpreneur survival guidebook, precisely trying to keep us alive.
Yay.
And it's really how you use love as the core of what you do. Not separating yourself, your human self, from your business self. Knowing that there's just one of you doing everything and all, right?
Yeah.
You can only multitask so much. And just making sure that you connect with yourself first, you connect with others in a healthy way, and that you connect with whatever your higher power vision is, right? Even if it's just creation or energy or the cosmos, whatever it is, there is something way bigger than us. And when we forget about that, it can be super frustrating and it can be super disnourishing. But when we don't balance the three, yourself, the community, and the higher purpose, that's when then we go wrong. And again, it's hard to find a balance. It's hard to do it right all the time. You're not gonna get it right all the time. But that's what the book is about. It's just giving people tools from what I learned in my journey, from what some of my friends have learned as well, and just let them know that they're not alone out there trying to do it in a different way, and that the different way, it's a good thing. You can actually be profitable, sustainable, enjoyable, and all of those cool, fun things.
I love that. And is anything we haven't covered, or maybe covered a lot, that you want to leave the people with, this you want to get off of your chest right now?
No, just I think it's just what we've talked about all this time, which is yeah, we're just all in this together. We're all kind of messed up, and we're all kind of amazing and great and magnificent, all at the same time. One thing doesn't have to take over the other.
Multidimensional human being.
Totally. So just embrace the chaos. We're really chaotic, but beautifully chaotic. So
exactly, I love that. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you or find your book?
All of my social media is AX Santibanez. I'll pass down.
I'll put the links down below in the show notes.
Yeah. And it's everywhere: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. And now I actually just released an album with affirmations based on the book, precisely because sometimes you need to listen to it.
They were really good. I listened to them. I was like, oh, good, man. They hit the spot. They're good. And
I know.
Like it's chill, like very chill.
I had a great musician. He's Argentinian and he's amazing with what he does. He's magical. So I'm a music focused person. So I needed that. I need to make my little break. Sometimes it's just the 2 minutes that they last. And sometimes I'll just play a song, whatever song I need to, for never ending loops all day long, maybe. Just because I need to get there. I need to get into that vibe.
Have you done subliminals yet?
Yeah, but it's not as fun. I feel like I'm doing something underneath.
Yeah, it kind of feels sneaky, like manipulative for almost.
It feels somewhere in the line.
You have to be super cautious about what you put out there.
Exactly. And I'm much passionate about what you do out in the open, what you can actually feel with your senses, even though I do feel a lot of things under the senses. But I think it's great that we work with the human, that we have disregarded so much as the bad part. And it's not the bad part, it's all of us. So yeah, that's why I did that. And I found it really useful. Again, I did it for myself at first, and then I'm like, well, maybe people could use it.
I love that. Thanks for sharing it. So yeah, again, the link will all down below. What is that? Grammar.
It's Yoda. It's Yoda. That's what it is.
Yeah. You all be awesome.
I'll be below. But yeah, no, thank you for the space. And I hope that people get something positive from our conversation. And again, you never know why you needed to say something. Someone else needed to listen to it. So I hope that's the case. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being you and being here.
Thanks. Likewise.
Thank you. Well, have a fabulous day. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. As always, if you have some feedback, if you've got questions, or if you just want to connect with Ximena and I, then just follow any of the links down below in the show notes or description and reach out to us. Connect with us, leave a comment, leave a lovely review if you are listening on Apple iTunes, because this way more people can actually get to know about this podcast and the free-flowing conversations with fellow female entrepreneurs who are changing the world one little personal piece at a time. Because I think when you become an entrepreneur and you're leading from a sense of abundance, a sense of connectivity and collaborativeness, and just really want to help maybe an older version of yourself, or maybe a client that is struggling, where you can step up and help as sort of even a big sister slash mentor person with your expertise, with your lived experience. That is so beautiful. And I think for me, that is how business should be at its core, just generally making the world a little bit of a better place in so many different ways. There's so many ways people can use their talents and skills to make a dent and change someone's life, even if it's just one person. I love that. So if that resonates with you, be sure to check out all of the other podcast episodes and subscribe so you can hear about the weekly new podcast episodes with so many more leaders around the world when it comes to soulful business practices and entrepreneurship, and just having fun conversations around life and business. And with that, I'll leave you and wish you a fabulous day. Bye-bye.